heart will be one with your song. There are numerous strings in your lute. Let me add my own among them. Amid your numberless stars, let me place my own little lamp. There are numerous strings in your lute. Let me add my own among them. In the dance of your festival of lights, my heart will throb, and my life will be one with your smile. There are numerous strings in your lute. Let me add my own among them. Remaining standing for our opening words and our chalice lighting. We gather here to seek unity of spirit in the midst of diversity, to heal the wounded and confront our own oppression, to instill joy and confidence in our children, to grow in mind, body, and spirit ourselves, and to bear witness to the transforming power of love, beyond which not a single atom nor soul is lost forever. Thus do we covenant with each other in the presence of all that is holy. May we now join in our chalice lighting words, which are taken from the children's version of our Unitarian Universalist principles. Number one, we believe that each and every person is important. Number two, we believe that all people should be treated fairly and kindly. Number three, we believe that we should encourage one another and learn together. Number four, we believe that each person must be free to search for what is true and right in life. Number five, we believe that all persons should have a say about the things that concern them. Number six, we believe in working for a peaceful, fair, and free world. Finally, number seven, we believe in caring for our planet Earth, the home we share with all living things. I invite you now to offer your friendly greetings one to the other. Any age, come forward and we'll share a story. Come on, come on. Do not be shy. Hello there. Welcome, everyone. Really good to see you, especially on such a wet day. It's a nice place to be. It is raining. Yes, it is. Yeah, we'll hope that it'll stop eventually, but especially before flooding. You know, there are stories that tell such important things about what it means to live together that it seems like those stories live for a very long time and are told by many people in many places. And one of those stories that has lived for a long time because it says something very important, is a story called Stone Soup that I remember hearing when I was a little kid. So let's find out what Stone Soup is about. There was once a comfortable little village nestled in the mountains, and the people who lived there had more than enough to keep themselves content. One day, 2 travelers came along. Their coats were tattered, their hats were torn, their dusty shoes had holes in their soles. Hungry and tired, one traveler said to the other, "Surely someone here can spare a bit of food." They knocked boldly on the door, and it creaked open, and a woman asked, "What do you want?" "Please," said one of the travelers, "we are hungry. Do you care? Will you share? Do you have any food?" The woman squinted her eyes and tartly replied, "No." And she quickly slammed the door shut. Not a good beginning, huh? The travelers walked a little further down the road and knocked on another door, and this time a young boy answered. His brown eyes were sweet, and he said shyly, "Good day. What do you want?" "Please," said one of the travelers, "we are hungry. Do you care? Will you share? Do you have anything for us to eat?" The boy replied, "There is nothing for you to eat here," and he sadly closed the door. Well, the travelers wandered through the entire village, knocking on every door, but everywhere they went, they heard the same thing. "I don't care, I won't share, there is no food." Well, they sat down to rest beside a well, and one of the travelers sighed and clutched his empty belly. He said, "If there's really no food in this elegant little village, then the people who live here are in greater need than we are. We should make them our magical soup." So the 2 travelers climbed up the edge of the well and shouted, "We are master cooks. If anyone in this town has a big black pot, we will make the most delicious soup anyone has ever tasted." Well, a door opened slowly, and a round man emerged carrying a gigantic black pot. "I love to eat," he said. "Here's a pot. Let me see what you 2 master cooks can do with it." "Watch and see," said one of the travelers with glee. The travelers filled the pot with cold water and built a fire, and soon the flames licked the sides of the pot, and billows of steam rose into the air, and curious people began to gather. "What is happening?" the townspeople said. "We are making an unusual soup," said one of the travelers. "It requires a special ingredient, a magical ingredient, actually, that I'm certain you will find in this town." All the eyes in the crowd watched as one of the travelers reached down and picked up an ordinary stone and tossed it into the pot with a splash. "We are making stone soup," he said. "It will be nutritious, delicious, incredible, and edible. And it would be tastier, honestly, if we only had a carrot." "Where would we find a carrot in this town?" said the other traveler. "We knocked on every door, and everywhere we heard, 'I don't care, I won't share, there is no food.'" "Well, perhaps we cannot make this delicious soup after all," said the other traveler. And with a sad shrug of their shoulders, they began to turn away, when a child timidly said, "Wait, I might have a small carrot." "Excellent," shouted one of the travelers. "Bring what you've got, put it in the pot. We're making stone soup. This magical soup would taste even better if we had, say a potato." "I've got a potato," said someone in the crowd. "Wonderful," shouted the traveler. "Bring what you've got, put it in the pot. We are making stone soup." "It would taste better still," said another traveler, "if we had just a few more ingredients." "Well, perhaps," said one villager, "I could bring green beans." "Well," said another, "if you're going to bring green beans, I can bring my prized corn." "Well, I'm not going to be outdone either," said someone else. "I will bring my excellent egg noodles." And one by one, voices announced, "I will bring some celery. I will bring a pinch of pepper. I will bring a sprig of parsley. I will bring a tiny turnip." "Well, why are you waiting?" cried the travelers. "Bring what you got. Put it in the pot. We're making stone soup." And everyone in the town ran home to bring one small thing to put in the pot, and food flew through the air and landed with splashes in the growing soup, and soon the pot was full and simmering, and a wonderful smell drifted through the air. The smell was so tempting, people brought out bowls and spoons and chairs and tables, and they placed hearty loaves of bread, chunks of cheese, and bowls of fruit on the tablecloth. This is making me hungry. And everyone came to taste the soup and marveled at the flavor. "It's amazing," said one woman. "These two travelers made such a delicious soup out of stone," they exclaimed. "Out of stone," said the traveler, "and a magical ingredient, sharing." As the travelers left the town, they said, "If anyone ever wants to make stone soup again, just remember the recipe. Bring what you've got, put it in the pot. Every bit counts, from the largest to the least. Together we can celebrate the stone soup feast." Even the dogs and cats can celebrate with us. So we tell that story because whatever you share here is important and makes a difference in who we are. It's true for us all. And so as you move off to your class, I hope you'll think about, you do what? You're 3 years old? Well, see, you have a lot of sharing to do. 2, excellent. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but enjoy yourself in class. You are tall. Yeah, enjoy yourself. We're going to stand and sing number 323. There are new.
Why don't we all just shout out our ages before we sing?
Okay, I'm 55. That's fine. I'll tell you.
Break not the circle. Let's rise in all the ways that we do. Break not the circle of enabling love, where people grow forgiven and forgiving. Break not that circle, make it wider still, till it includes, embraces all the living. Come wonder at this love that comes to life, where words of freedom are with humor spoken, and people keep no score of wrong and guilt, but will that human bonds remain unbroken. Join then the movement of a love that frees, till people of whatever race or nation will truly be themselves, stand on their feet, see eye to eye with laughter and elation. Please be seated. I have the pleasure of introducing a very special guest and my new friend, Roberta Hill. Roberta is professor of English and American Indian Studies at UW-Madison and a member of the Oneida Nation of Wisconsin. She is also a published poet, and it is for all these reasons that she visits us today, because the text the choir will sing in a moment was written by Dr. Hill. And I'm excited to welcome her to read her beautiful poem and to speak on its relevance to our worship theme for the month, Covenant. Dr. Hill.
Greetings. I feel honored to be here and to share my poem with you, and to just mention a few very brief things. I appreciate and thank Drew Collins for getting in touch with me and letting me know that the poem had been published as in a musical score, and for the choir with all their energy and beauty to share it and the work that they put forth in having it be presented and sung. I also want to thank my friend Ajima Kamau, who came with me today. And I want to mention a few things about the poem, and then I'll read it. It was written probably around in the mid-90s or so to thank Oneida elders for the knowledge and what they shared with me. They were very tough people. Many of them were native speakers, and they helped me understand a lot about Oneida life and my heritage. And one of the things that they really brought back and helped me to understand, if we think about a covenant, is the fact that we remember people. Maybe you have people that you remember. And when we remember them, they live again in our lives and in our experience. And so it is memory that is used to base that whole idea of a covenant, the importance of remembering. And their parents and grandparents encouraged them to remember. And so they often mentioned to me how, well, at least I remember one of them often saying, her grandmother would always say to her, remember this, you know what I'm telling you, remember this. So the poem throughout has images to honor these people and maybe to honor people you might think of, and to connect with the whole process of life. And there's a line in the poem that isn't sung but mentions climbing hills. And in Native traditions, the idea is that we live through by climbing 4 hills. The first one is infancy, the second one is childhood, the third one is adulthood, and the last one, and the steepest one, is in old age, or as elderly people. And so, let me see, it connects to, in the very last lines, or final lines of the poem, it connects with the idea that all of us are part of the radiant earth, and that when I met these people and heard from them and listened to them, they were always full of good humor. They always liked to make jokes and have fun, and share their experiences and their joy. And so they always had this sense of radiance about them. And they often didn't want to tell me everything. They would leave a few things unspoken or questions in my mind because they really wanted me to come back again. So it was one way that they had of getting people to come back. So we need to just think about how we are part of that spiritual energy that pervades the whole universe, and the earth is part of that, and we are part of the earth. So, to those who matter, the sunlight in your heart hovers in your smile when you share your knowledge. Women and men of intelligence and grace, You created the spirit of this place. How you have aided my soul, that fluttering thing that tries to launch across the haze, that wants to flit beyond the first green leaves of life. The moonlight in your heart fills this city as it sleeps and dreams. That moonlight knits our wounds through the many ways you think of others climbing the hills behind you. Cold Mountain said, "Don't lose the moment's happiness." The same wind that woke him wakes us now. The starlight in your heart twinkles in Duck Creek, glistens like dew on early grass. It helps the buds break as now into a shock of green. When we talk, sometimes I see one intense, immense earth, wider than our words and more profound, brilliant as a breath, wearing your radiance. Okay, thank you.
So lovely. Thank you. Victoria Safford loves to tell this story about the start of her ministry, and it really is a story that resonates with my own life. She talks about in her beginning ministry in her first congregation that there was a 90-year-old member of the congregation who had not only been there her entire life, but her parents were also born into the church in the 19th century. And very soon after she began, the 90-year-old woman marched into Victoria's office and announced to her, "I'm not sure I like you or your point of view." And not a very auspicious beginning, and she concluded with, "And just let me make it clear that I've outlived 3 other ministers and I will outlive you." Well, that was a hard start, and I've had plenty of those, but she writes that over the time that they came to know each other, she formed a fierce love for this woman for so many reasons. In part because she got to know more of her story. She found out that she was a dedicated political conservative in what had become a progressive community, and a liberal Christian in a congregation that had known some eras of theological diversity, but also a lot of intolerance. She had worked for the U.S. State Department through 3 wars, and for the American Unitarian Association through the merger in 1961 with the Universalist Church of America. And this was the church of her childhood, which she never left, although most of the votes at annual meetings had not gone her way for 40 years. She was no stranger to discord. And she was right. She did outlive Victoria's tenure at the congregation. It was a couple of years after Victoria left that this beloved member died. And Victoria writes how deeply sad she was to lose her in the world. She concluded, "What I loved most about her was her commitment to that church, no matter what. Her fidelity to it, her ferocity with which she paid her pledge each year, no matter how wayward the budget or insufferable, in her humble opinion, the sermons. She kept her covenant with those people, with their proud history and their bright promise of the future, and with the free faith tradition that they embodied." She concludes, "I was a young minister then, and her way of being in relation, her integrity taught me more about Unitarian Universalism than I'd ever learned in seminary." We are bound by covenant, each to each and each to all, and by what theologian Rebecca Parker calls a freely chosen and life-sustaining interdependence. And thus the central question for us is not, what do we believe, but more, what do we believe in? What larger love, to what people, principles, values, and dreams shall we be committed? In this month, when we are exploring covenant, I want, in the middle of it, to take a chance to speak to you why this theme matters so much and why it is worthy of a month and more of exploration. It matters because covenant asks us to rethink and reconnect with the larger values that help us understand the deepest meanings of our lives. And because every relationship is dynamic and fulfilling if we live into it right, it helps that it is shaped by a covenantal understanding. Almost every meaningful relationship, our coworkers, our family, our life partners, we make promises and choose to be with each other. And the choices that we make, the ideals that flow through the midst of those choices, those make all the difference. Karin last week talked about a relationship between a couple where they were so legalistic in how they described their marriage that they had like a contract about when they would make love and how they'd spend money and make decisions almost by some mathematical formula that pretty much removed any chance of passion or creativity. Covenant matters because I've seen again and again in communities when enough of the congregation understands what covenant is about, it helps them move to the core, to the dynamic heart of what really is at the essence of why that community exists. And it aids them over and over, especially when times are difficult. One of the congregations that I had the honor to serve had been a part of a large urban area for many, many decades. And at one point, the congregation made a decision that has been lived out over and over again in other congregations all over this country because of the changes in the demographic in the neighborhood, and especially changes in the socioeconomic and racial status of the neighborhood. The majority of the congregation decided to relocate into an area that would be, quote, more attractive to the people that typically come to Unitarian Universalist congregations. Well, there was a small group of that congregation who decided to think more deeply about what they believed their covenant to be with their faith. And what they decided was that they believed what was most essential for them was to remain in that neighborhood and to seek to find new ways to reach out to the people who lived there and serve that community. And so from that loving ideal, they tried that work. And it probably was in part because of timing, the late 60s and early 70s, which like now is a very difficult time in terms of racial energy. And in the era of Black power, it was almost impossible for that predominantly white but well-intentioned group of people to really build trust with that community. They gave it the good go, but eventually they needed again to sit with what are we called to do that is part of our deeper understanding, our covenant. And what they decided really was quite bold. They decided that they had enough abundance for them basically to give away their church building that they had been a part of for decades to a small community organization that helped the people in that neighborhood to help each other improve their lives. And they had just enough money in their endowment to buy a modest building in a new neighborhood, one that was also incredibly diverse. It embodied a great racial diversity and class diversity, a significant number of LGBTQ folk. And they began again in that new place, wishing that other organization love in their work. But it's not the end of the story either. That's why covenant is so important. Life continues and change never stops. A few decades later, they were at a place again where they realized that things had become stagnant and they were losing energy. And irony of ironies, at the same time, not really that far away, but in a very different kind of neighborhood, that larger congregation that left, they were stagnant as well. And strangely and wonderfully enough, after over 30 years, those two congregations recombined in recent years to become a new and different congregation. And imagine the power of bringing those years of experience, of bringing a sort of humble realization of coming back together and bringing all that they are to the table. It is essential that we have the kinds of covenants that help us know who we are and how to do that. It is also important for us to remember that FUS has been a covenantal organization through and through since its inception. And that's because all Unitarian Universalist congregations throughout our history have been steeped in covenantal understandings of ourselves. While the concept of covenant goes way back to the ancient Israelites, there are at least two major places of intersection with Unitarian Universalism. First of all, there is the founding of our faith in Unitarianism in the 16th century in Transylvania. And the words that are attributed to one of the founders of that tradition, Francis David, were these: "We do not need to think alike, to love alike." And he based that on his understanding of Jesus' teachings, of a radical understanding of an inclusive community. And so the sentiment that was essential to our forebears was the idea that our religious community was based on love and on covenant, not on creed, and on orthopraxy, or right relationship and practice, and not orthodoxy, right belief. And a second event here in the American Unitarian Universalist tradition. In the 1630s, the Puritans organized their free churches around an idea of covenant, which at the time was very radical from a more hierarchical model. And although it may not be apparent from who we are now, we were heavily influenced not only by that understanding of covenant with the Puritans, but in many ways, even our form of worship is so much based in their understanding of the Word being the essential way that we know what is true. And so that understanding that came from the 17 and early 1800s, that concept of covenant that was articulated in the Cambridge Platform of 1648, still is alive in us today. As theologian and historian Reverend Alice Blair Wesley, one of our own, taught us about that covenantal understanding. She says that it is always coming from the perspective of an ideal, a way of understanding community that is based in a very particular way of being. And that more than ever in our progressive traditions, we need to reconnect ourselves with that truth. And that truth is that any authentic hope within our communities is never individualistic in its essence. It is never self-developed. It is always social and transcendent in its dimensions. And it needs to be renewed and strengthened again and again, and will never be lived perfectly, but nonetheless lives on in who we are. She calls the essence of that the dialectic of covenant and conversion. And what she means is that we do it by walking the path together, not alone, always together. And along that way, those of us who walk with each other by our experiences together and by growing to know each other more deeply, the way that Victoria and the 90-year-old woman grew to know and have affection for each other, that process actually converts us. It changes us forever. We never see that person or the world the same way by that experience, and that saves our lives again and again. It is that radical form of hope that we give ourselves to, not for ourselves alone, but for everyone. Our congregation is covenantal, and we promise each other again and again to be beloved community. And we seek again and again to practice love, to make it the best that we can. Last week, in the order of service quote, Diane Dalgert's words said, "One instrument, many strings. One rainbow, many colors. One choir, many voices. One tapestry, many threads. One people, many beliefs. The fiber that binds the many into one is the fiber of covenant." That covenant helps us make meaning out of that sense of unity and oneness. Because we all know that the ways that we differ in every Unitarian congregation, including this one, are not minor. We have very passionate and sometimes polar opposite understandings of why we are here, what we want. What is it that helps us know how to really be one? Well, there are a variety of ways that I believe we are one, and covenant helps us understand them all. We are one, I believe, because we are again and again engaged in a bold experiment here. And it's one that parallels, I believe, the larger truth of the planet. We live here on this planet together, and we could do it the hard and discordant way, or we could find ways without changing each other or each other's mind to find places of unity and transformation so that we might live in greater accord and connection. And one way or another, we experiment with that every week here and then go out into the world and see what we've learned doing it in the big classroom of life. We practice that again and again, and covenant helps us hone in on the essence of what we are trying to do. It asks us to return to the foundational idealism that we do not need to think alike to love alike, and that we understand that love as a dynamic verb, one that is lived out in how we behave towards each other, how we speak to one another, especially what we do when we're mad at each other. Those are the places that love are lived out most meaningfully. And I've had the honor again and again in the interim time to see over the process of people sitting down face to face and talking about the important questions of why they exist and hearing in each other deep disagreement, and yet staying in the circle anyway and continuing to figure out with those differences what holds us together, what will carry us forward together. What do we believe in? To what larger love? To what people? What principles? What values? What dreams shall we all together be committed? And I have seen that the choices that they make at the beginning of the interim time and what they understand themselves to be about are very different in our short time together by those conversations. We are one in the truth that we share this common human journey. We are one in covenant, our choice, our promise. We are one in a love that is active and transformative, sustainable and time-tested. It is that love that will serve you best. So no matter what the future brings, you will better know who you are. May we practice that love in the coming days. It will carry you into your future with great promise and strength. May that be our work. Amen. And blessed be. So many ways that we seek that love. As we move into the time of the offering, may we know that 50% of our offering these next weeks, 2 weeks, will be given to Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin, in a time where what they do in the world and in Wisconsin is especially important. May we have a sense of that covenant of generosity as the offering is given and received in love. We are grateful for the generosity of your financial gifts as well as the beauty of our musicians. We are also grateful for the other volunteers, our sound operator Mark Schultz, our greeter Joan Heitman, Sue Hogue and Dorit Bergen, and Richard DeVita and Jeannie Hills are our hospitality folks making coffee. And so I hope that we are able to thank them as well. We're always looking for people to volunteer every weekend, and so I hope that you will take a moment to sign up to do that soon. We have a couple of things that we want to point out. It is in the Red Floors that next Saturday there will be an anybody choir, and it was actually last Saturday. We don't want you to show up when there's nothing going on, but we do want everyone to show up next Sunday after the second service because it is our parish meeting. And this fall meeting always includes an exploration together of an open question, which is just exactly the kind of covenantal conversation that I referred to in my sermon. So I hope you will take some time to be part of that as well. For just a moment, we will offer a sort of meditation together as part of our cares of the congregation, because we are this weekend honoring a couple of days for international peace throughout the world. And it is also a weekend where all over the world we took the lead of our youth and helped them, assisted them in climate action all over the world. And I'm really proud to have been a part of that experience on Friday. There were many, many Unitarian Universalists who were there. The Unitarian Universalist clergy dispersed themselves through all of the opening gatherings that sort of sought to bless and help us think about our work that day. It was a deeply meaningful, powerful, and exciting day. And may we continue that essential work for the months and years to come. It really is some of the most important work we will ever do as human beings. So in that spirit, may we take just a moment together to offer some heartfelt thoughts. O Spirit of life and of that powerful love, may we find new meanings to that word, love. May it give us strength. May it help us listen rather than judge. May it help us be courageous in times of fear. May it assist us and sustain us as we try to make peace in our lives and in the world, even when peace eludes us. And may that love give us the strength to continue the work, to give our children a world that is sustainable and livable. May we give them a world where violence is not the given, but greater senses of humanity and connection. May we ask for the heart it takes to care for all people and for ourselves. In that spirit, for a moment, may we sit with the truth of our own lives. Whether we come here this morning with deep difficulty or fear or anger, or with a sense of love and celebration and peace. Either way, may love be present to us and strengthen us. May love help us really connect with one another, to be that support, to be that celebrator, to remember one another so that we might live on. We ask all of this in the name of that powerful love that our forebears risked their lives for. In this and more, we pray. Amen. And blessed be. May we rise in all the ways that we do and join our voices in number 131. Love will guide us. inside us will lead the way
on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. All right, here we go. Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. Hope inside us will lead the way.
on the road
On that road from greed to giving.
Love will
guide us through the night.
And now, as we prepare to leave this place, may that love indeed be deep within us, alive within us, enlivening us. We will not extinguish that love, though we may extinguish this chalice. We won't extinguish its ancient wisdom, the power that it brings to what we are committed to, or the warmth and compassion that it offers to us and we in turn to each other. These will remain until we gather in this place again. May you take a seat again and receive one final gift of music together here in worship.